Okay, wonderful people, get ready, buckle up, because we have the wonderful, amazing marriage webinar, and get ready for the intro.
You are making the world a better place by listening to the Joy of Living podcast. This is your guide to achieving a more purposeful, powerful, and positive life. Join Barry Shore in unlocking the best version of you and becoming happier, healthier, and wealthier. And now, here's your ambassador of joy, Barry Shore.
Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Now, how can I make the categorical statement that all the thousands and tens of thousands of people around the world that are tuning in and will be sharing this video are all good-looking? Because by definition, if you tuned in to the marriage webinar with our amazing panel, some of whom not even here yet, but they will be, God willing, then it means you're always looking for and finding the good. And this is, I'm going to date this particular session. We didn't always say the date because they live for eternity in the cloud and such. But I'm going to make the date on this one because it's actually quite important. The date is today, December 29th, 2021. So why am I doing that? Because 2021 is even more a watershed year than 2020. And it is leading us into a new feeling of exuberance and hope and love and benefit in the world. So I am believing, it seems like it's so funny. Are you hearing feedback, Maura?
I am. I thought somebody was joining us.
Well, maybe Diane says her computer had to restart. Anyway, there's so many things going on right now. We'll just do the best we can with what we have, because that's who we are. We are the ambassador of happiness, the ambassador of joy. We have Dr. Diane Medved, hopefully will be joining us in a few minutes. Lori McDermott, she is the wife expert. And here, coming in, streaming in live from Northwest America, it's the wonderful Dr. Diane Medved. Welcome, Di.
Thank you. It's been hard to get into the show, but we have a lot of snow still, and it's supposed to snow again. And
wait a minute, can you show us the snow? I want people to see. Can you show it?
Not without picking up my computer.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we'll have to believe her that there's snow in the Northwest, which I've been reading about. There is a downpour in Southern California, so Lori is stuck on the freeway and she can't seem to get out. She can't move. It's pouring rain. And, you know, rain in Southern California is like a blizzard in the Northwest. People get paralyzed. They don't know what to do. And Maura is, of course, in Southern Florida, where it's sunny and beautiful. Sorry?
Fighting the sun, Barry.
Right. And I'm in Henderson, Nevada, where it's delightful and pleasant and a beautiful winter's day, just cool. It's actually 33 degrees this morning, which I love, because I know it's not going to be 33 the rest of the day. And there's no snow or anything. Actually, snow knows where it belongs, the top of a mountain. You can go visit it if you want.
Barry, I hear your voice is like recycling into my world.
Yes. And it's the same thing for Maura also, right?
Barry, you sound fine now. I don't hear any background, but you're hearing it.
So Diane got the disease. She got infected.
I hear it from you, Barry, and I hear it from myself. I haven't heard it from Maura.
You can't hear Maura?
And you both are perfect. As far as my listening, you're perfect.
I hear you, Maura, and you're perfect also. But when I speak, and when Barry speaks, there's this replay of what I'm saying in this Martian voice.
Okay, well, actually, it fits perfectly for what we want to do today. Maura, I mentioned we have, thank God, thousands of people who were really more interested in today's show than even the past year and a half or 2 years we've been doing this. And I dated this particular show because it's December 29th, 2021. And as I just mentioned, in my humble opinion, 2021 is even more a watershed year than 2020. 2020, we all got blindsided. We didn't know really what's going on. It was a real change. It was an overturning of everything. 2021, people were still trying to get their footing. And now we're at the end of 2021. And there is, in my opinion, an exuberance, a looking forward to 2022. And that is the ability and the, how should we say it, the essence of what I call the DNA of the American experience. Now, of course, I'm speaking more as an American here than people around the world in other countries. Now, I do know, because I speak regularly to people in other countries, I speak to people in Pakistan, in China, in Israel, in South Africa, in Uruguay, of all places. I have people that I speak to regularly, and you don't have the same kind of feeling as we do here. Now, again, I'm projecting what I feel, which is that 22 is going to be a transition year for the positive, for the purposeful, the pleasant, and the going back, not so much back to what we were, because we don't want that, but going forward, using the experience of this pandemic to bring us into a better place. So that's the basis of today. We're not talking about low marriage rates. We're not talking about low birth rates. We're not going to talk about stuff that weighs upon our ideas of discussing marriage. People want to hear upbeat, enlivening, give me some nice, positive information. So I'm going to tell you, we had about 132 letters or emails that came in, and 20% of them wanted to focus on what I'll call, for want of a better term, the negative stuff, and 80+% wanted to hear things like, gee, what books did you read in 2021, meaning the panel? What talks did you listen to that inspired you? What food are you eating for the new year? Stuff that on one level nobody cares about, and yet people care. They want to know simple, nice, pleasant stuff. So let's just start, as we usually do, with Dr. Diane. And I'm going to ask you a question that came in. There was at least 34 people that asked almost the exact same question. And the question is, when did you stop being afraid this year?
When did I stop being afraid? It reminds me of that question. When did you stop being your wife? I'm perpetually afraid, but I'm not allowed to say downbeat things. I'm not afraid all the time, and the things that make me happy are being with my grandchildren, being with my husband, talking about, just sit down with me and talk about history of a country, history of a place, and I'll be lost in what he's saying and how he's saying it. And that's a wonderful thing. If you can engage with someone, then you can use that time as a respite from the rest of the world. And so I find, especially engaging with a spouse, someone who you're very close to and you have a communication style with, that can help you tune out all the bad stuff, which is always in the background. But on the same level, it doesn't have to be in the foreground. And also, I think it's if you can connect with nature, if you can go outside and walk in even a city street, look at people's houses, look how they decorate their yard. Anywhere you are, if you go outside and walk, you are connecting with people or with nature. And that takes you outside yourself and brings you to a place where there's a commonality with the rest of the world. So when did I stop being afraid? I don't know if I would phrase it that way, but I would say there are many, many times every day where I focus on being grateful and looking at the many things that I've been blessed with, and the people around me, and the children. I used to think when I had little kids, who do people laugh if they don't have children? And if you can engage with children, you will be transported to a time of discovery and joy and awe that I think sometimes we're missing as adults. So that'll be my answer for now.
Thank you so much. I want to talk about connecting in nature and forefront in a moment. I still hear me somehow feeding back, and you're right, a Martian voice. I don't know what it is, but it was Maura. I don't know if you ever were afraid, but when did you stop being afraid in 2021?
Well, or when you ask that question, you could look at it as a lifetime. When did you stop being afraid? Or you could use it in the sense of the COVID. So what were you referring to? Everything like life?
I think that the way I understood these questions, again, I took the amalgam of all of them, put them into this phrasing, but I think it's the COVID. It's that force of evil cloud that's moving through like a tornado and wreaking havoc everywhere it goes. Ah!
All right, then I'll give you a short-term answer and I'll give you a long-term answer. Because I grew up with a lot of death in my life. Not my life, I wasn't dying, but I grew up as a young child surrounded by death. People were dying around me. So I was very traumatized by the idea of death. And so I carried, and if you look at some pictures of me from years ago, you will definitely see it. It was like I would carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. Now, oddly enough, that was why I asked you the question, what is the length of the time you want me to cover? When COVID came out, I was flown over to England because it was some event I had to speak at. And while I was there at a cocktail party, I was able to meet a very young, beautiful young woman who happened to have been studying the COVID virus. We didn't even have a name for it then. And me, because I always love to ask people first on rather than reading it in a newspaper or elsewhere, a newspaper. I remember saying to her,
You're dating yourself, Maura.
Aren't I? I said, I saw somebody with a newspaper today in Sarasota, Florida, who happens to be a newsman. I said, figures he's still reading a paper. But anyway, I miss those days. But when I was there in England, and again, this is probably 2 weeks before we shut down airlines and everything, travel. I said to her, you are working to study this virus. I said, can you tell me what you're finding? So what would it have been? It's like the equivalent of the CDC over in England. And she smiled and she said, I'm sorry. She said, we're not allowed to talk about our findings. Now, the interesting thing, and keep this all in perspective, for my first, let's say, entree with a professional involved with investigating COVID. She was dressed in a sleeveless, shiny gown. She was hugging everyone, and we were not socially distanced. Who knew, right? And she smiled and she said, I'm sorry, we're not allowed to share any of our findings. Now, it was probably a week after that we shut everything down, maybe 2 weeks. That was my first encounter with COVID. There was someone who was working on it. She was around it every day. She was at the top levels of the biological investigation in England, and she apparently was not concerned about her findings. So I think from the very beginning, COVID was not for me what it was for a lot of other people, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, when did I lose my fear? I'm going to tell you my fear of death, which is really what everybody was dealing with COVID. Isn't that right? Mm-hmm. Maybe I lost it during COVID, because I'll tell you, this is probably going into more details, but a year ago at this point, I spent 5 days sitting in the hospital with my husband, who was there for 5 days, who the year prior was there for 4 days in the hospital with a virus that he got, not COVID, but it totally affected his heart. And I didn't know 2 years in a row if he was going to make it out alive, and neither did the doctors. His heart was affected like by myocarditis or something as a result of this thing that he got. And so when I look at that, for me, it was almost like at my age, living through yet again experiences I had as a child watching people close to me die. And I remember last December, this time, the doctors not wanting to release him from the hospital. I think his heart was working at 25% of what it should have been. They wanted to hook him up on all kinds of things. And so I would say maybe 2021 was the year I was able to lose my fear, or at least, like we walk through that valley of the shadow of death, but we get to that point and it's somewhere we realize there's some things we have control over, some things we don't. We'll be grateful for every day, live life to the fullest every day. And I will tell you, my husband's heart, the doctor said, Jimmy, you're like a walking miracle. He's back to playing basketball and the heart is back doing its thing. So maybe you could say 2021 is when I lost my fear.
That was very well said. Thank you. I want to also emphasize to people that are watching and or listening that Maura's husband, Jimmy, is an athlete. And I don't mean a weekend basketball pickup game guy. He is full on, play hard for decades of his life. This is what he does. And so when he says that his heart was not, was 25%, you're talking about a very robust human being. That's very nice. I want to make mention to you something Diane said about connecting in nature. It's one of my favorite acronyms that I call KIND, K-I-N-D, which stands for Connect in Nature Daily. The ability to do that, I think you brought out something very important, Diane, is truly one of those pieces that allows what you just said, Maura, to feel life. When you walk around in the snow or just, stomping through leaves in the fall, wow. Is there anything more beautiful than having a kid, a person younger than you on one hand, a person maybe older on the other hand, and you're walking through leaves and kicking them up, or just singing just because? There is hardly anything in life more beautiful than reaffirming life. And I think that was the thrust of most of these questions. It wasn't, I took it as, how did you lose fear? Because a lot of people ask that, but it's also about reaffirming life again, because I think either consciously or unconsciously, I don't know, we're not talking about conspiracy, the government agencies created a penumbra of fear. I don't know if they meant to, but fear seemed to have permeated everybody's mindset. And it took time to get through that. And I think that for me personally, I am not a fearful person. I've been very close to death a couple of times. By the same token, I have to watch people I associate with because I am susceptible, as they say. So 2021, it's only been, I think, the past 5 months that I had no fear whatsoever. I was cautious, but I wasn't fearful. I think there's a distinguishing item there. Being cautious and being fearful are two different things. And I like being cautious. I think it's a good thing to do. It's smart, but I'm not afraid. And that's a wonderful thing. And you're right. Isn't it amazing, Maura, that you can quote from the Psalms? I think most people know the 23rd Psalm. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me, my rod and thy staff, they comfort me, etc., etc. I only point it out because the Psalms were written or composed or put together, let's say, almost 3,000 years ago. There's been a lot of stuff in 3,000 years where people could be afraid and lots of stuff happening. In other words, the Psalms speak to the very essence of the human condition. And when you keep the forefront, as you said so nicely, Diane, of positive outlook, there's always going to be the stuff happening. But where is your forefront? Where are you looking towards? Where are you living in? And we want to live in joy and happiness, peace, and love. So thank you so much. So in a similar vein, people are asking, what are the 2 best books that you read in 2021? Diane,
Well,
are there 2 books that really helped you?
I'm famously illiterate, but one of them.
Nobody believes it. Go ahead.
No, because I do try and keep up with all the newspapers, and my husband, being a talk show host, subscribes to a lot of them, and they're physical newspapers, and they pile up on a chair that is really embarrassing should anyone see how far behind I am. And I actually get pleasure out of a lot of the newspaper, and I get a lot of, sometimes I cry when I read the newspaper. But as far as books, I'll tell you, for a couple of years now, I've been studying the book of Mishlei.
Mishlei is Proverbs. For the people, Proverbs.
And it's enigmatic and difficult. And that's why I've been studying with a partner, a rabbi in Israel. And you asked, do I read it? Well, I read a sentence at a time and then I read all the commentaries about it to try and find out the depths of it. And so, I mean, that book has been central in my life I've been learning with that rabbi for more than 25 years every week. It's Rabbi Hannah Keller, author of about 35 books, probably more. And in any case, I find the delving into the layers of meaning to be significant and interesting and engaging. I also like to look at, now this is not a book, but I look at the website of All Theta, which is a Jewish website that gives wonderful little short videos about topics that are always top of mind, such as how do we get rid of fear, but it also has individual lessons from parts of the Bible that we cover every week in the Torah. And I find that interesting. I've read books by Rabbi, I'm pretty Jewish stuff. So Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, he has a book on leadership. And I think anyone who is interested in analyzing our leaders and the leaders that we can choose for the future would do well to see his opinions and facts that he gathers together in a way that is accessible to everyone. So those are a few things that I've been engaged in. I know a lot of it's Jewish, but I find...
Well, actually, I would agree with you that it's Jewish. At the same token, it's universal. Now, there's one of the great attractions of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, peace upon his name, because he passed away, unfortunately, this year, is that he spoke the universal language. The universal language that was rooted in love. And that was the thrust of what it was that he was about. Just to dovetail, I'm going to go out of turn for I'll ask Maura. Well, one of the books that he wrote, I was very moved by this year, and that's called Not in God's Name.
I have it here.
Yeah, and it is so powerful because it talks about why religions, why adherents in religion would actually use violence to further their agenda, when it should be the exact opposite. And he writes movingly about the three great religions that are involved in strife and stress, which of course are Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. And he writes so carefully that you wouldn't know that he's a rabbi. Put that aside. It's really writing about the text and writing about how adherents would even consider violence as a recommended venue to further an idea.
As a tactic or a strategy to try and reach peace.
Very good.
Never is violence for the purpose of conquest.
Yes.
It's always defense and trying to reach peace and do what God wants. It's always, in the Bible, it's under God's command. And so there's that aspect to it, even though Rabbi Sachs works for anyone.
So I think it's very important what you said. So you're right. It's Jewish texts, but these are universal once they came into the world. Well, Maura, are there the two books that you read this year that moved you, that you found amazing?
Do you know why I'm laughing, Barry? Is because sometimes you ask questions that are so revelatory. People would look at me, the ambassador of happiness, and they think, oh, she probably reads all this light stuff. And I don't. I am always reading nonfiction. And I'm so glad, Diane, you go first. I love the fact that you go ahead of me. Believe it or not, one of the most compelling books I read was something, the exact title may elude me right now, but it was something like 100 Years of Mind Control. I loved it. And you know what it was? It was all about going back. It actually started, let's say, from the late 1800s, took place in Europe. And it was all very well documented history about how various forces, entities, governments, whatever, used whatever technology, starting with newspapers, but it was so many other ways of controlling the way people thought. Now, believe it or not, people might think, oh, Maura, I have no interest. I used to have friends that say, Maura, you read stuff that's so boring. But for me, I love it because, again, this goes into the human condition, and it makes you think, well, how do people respond to certain things? What makes them respond well? What makes them being used by others. So that, I love the book. Sorry, I couldn't get any of my girlfriends to enjoy it, but I loved it. Another book, can I get it for you right now? Because I'm giving it to somebody tomorrow. Hang on.
Okay. And then to that point, that while she's going to get the book, interestingly enough, I think you know this, Diane, it was, I believe, a nephew of Sigmund Freud that was in the forefront of using advertising as, in quotation marks, a form of mind control. And it was, I'm sure he was mentioned in the book, a nephew of Sigmund Freud was part and parcel of using human psychology, especially, by the way, when it came to the marketing of cigarettes. I mean, that was one of his big things. But okay, so yes, you went to get the book.
You know, I was going to get the book because it was in the kitchen. My husband already brought it downstairs. I'm sharing with a friend tomorrow. But let me tell you why I love this book, and this will address the audience tonight. It's a very short book, and it is about it's a history of an establishment that was in the northern part of New Jersey, right over I want to say maybe the George Washington Bridge or Tappan Zee Bridge in northern New Jersey. And it was Bill Miller's Riviera. And it was all about, I don't know if you're familiar with Bill Miller, but he apparently was a big man during the 40s and the 50s. He was in Las Vegas, and he probably ran a lot of shows during the era when people would go out and they would listen to Sinatra and many of these places. Well, because I'm a native of New Jersey, I was able to get this book, and it was written by the son of a police officer who was responsible for watching over the whole establishment. The reason why I loved it so much, and this speaks a lot of me as well, is that it talked about an era when families and people could all get dressed up and they would go out for a dinner. And I guess they would do these dinner theaters several times a day. You'd get a show, you'd get a dinner, probably spaghetti and meatballs, who knows, something like that. And they had the top entertainers that would play there. They had this retractable roof that would play, or it would be open for the warmer weather in New Jersey. Again, only 6 months, but what it did for me is that it captured a piece of Americana during an era where people could get dressed up, they could go out together, they could feel festive, they could listen to music, they could celebrate and eat together and have fun. The separate side of this was the history of this same establishment that, as I later learned in the book, was paid for by the gambling that went on in another room that no one knew about. So it was a great piece of American history. And having met with the author of the book, who used to remember going there as a child, it was wonderful and fun. But the thing I look forward to when I'm looking at all kinds of information, and I love history, I will always look at what I could find from the past that we all feel good about, that makes us smile, that brings us together, that lifts our spirit. And I always say to myself, how can we take something like that and move it into today and tomorrow? You know, there's some people, they like to get rid of everything from yesterday, and there's other people who want to hold on to everything from yesterday. And if we were talking about the Bible or the Torah, isn't there a place that says, and I was thinking about this the other day, don't look upon the good old days and lament over them? Because every era, and I realize I am paraphrasing here, every era has good things and every era has challenging things. So that book, I will tell you, it made me smile. I'm thinking I could look forward to a time to get dressed up again, go out. In fact, my husband and I are going out soon to see Jersey Boys in January. Love the music, love the celebration. It makes everybody feel good, and you have to be from New Jersey to understand their humor. So,
by the way, this is so wonderful. Use this great word, festive. Festive. I think that is the thrust of all these questions that we're getting, that people want to feel festive again. People would like to dress again. Doesn't mean you have to get dressed to the nines, but the ability to get dressed and to socialize, to be with people, and to feel, you know something, we all made it through a very difficult, challenging time. But to be festive, and I love that idea of the gambling in the other room.
It was great.
First of all, that's so New Jersey. And, you know, it's like the famous line from Casablanca, I'm shocked Gambling here? How could that be? But yes, it's the gambling. Now, unfortunately, what happens is sometimes gambling takes over, and that becomes the essence, and the festivities become the secondary. But I like the idea of festive again, and I think that's what people are really looking forward to in 22. It is a time to celebrate. To celebrate the fact that we've all been through a very difficult, stressful, challenging time. So I'm going to tell you personally, there were two books that I found this year to be of major benefit to me. And each one of them, I think, is less than 100 pages. One of them is profound, and the other is complete fun. So the profound one is a book by Viktor Frankl, and it's not Man's Search for Meaning, because everybody knows that one. It's a book that was just published recently, I think in the past 2 years or so, called Yes to Life. Yes to Life. And it's the redaction of a number of the lectures that he gave in Vienna in 1946. Not even a year after liberation from Auschwitz and other concentration camps. And you read these, and you would never know the man had been through anything. Now, you have to know, because he speaks about it in the lectures, why he can even have the bona fides to speak about such things, and why he can say yes to life. But that was encouraging in the sense that if someone could go through total, complete hell and emerge with a zest for life, then how much more so for me? That was one. The second one just came into my hands about 2 months ago. I've been looking for it for about a year. It's a short book, and most people may know about the book called The Prince. You ever know that one? Or Pooh's Corner, remember that one? But this book is called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And if you haven't heard of it or you haven't seen it, I beg of you, find a copy, get it, read it, love it, revel with it. You can share it with a 4-year-old, a 44-year-old, an 84-year-old, a 124-year-old, because it is the universal message of kind, love, searching, and finding oneself. It is so well illustrated and so carefully worded that it's hard to put down. I mean, I read it sometimes just because I love reading it, even though I probably read it already 62 times, just because. So those are the two books this year that have really enabled me to push aside fear and work, as you said, Diane, in the forefront to keep connected nature daily, and as you said, Maura, to have a festive attitude for life. But let's look at another one that is really fun, I think.
Barry, yeah. You should mention your book. Do you have a copy of your book to hold up?
Yes.
How to slay here. I think you ought to hold up your book and let people look at that, because there's no more joyful book that exists.
Well, if you insist, my dear, wonderful, amazing friend. Da-da, da-da, da-da-da-da. Where is it?
On camera. There we go. The Joy of Living: How to Slay Stress and Be Happy. So that is Barry's book, and it reads very quickly, and it will make you smile because you will be so grateful to be alive when you've finished reading it. And I have read it, so I can attest that's true.
Me too, Diane. I'm glad you mentioned that, because when Barry was talking, I thought, I've read your book too. And if we could give you another plug, what I will say, Barry, about your book, it's very practical. For someone, there are some people, their personalities are kind of down or anything gets them down. You could open up your book at any spot and there's something to read, but there's something to do. And there's just very quick, easy and powerful, practical ways to pick yourself up. And had I thought about it, I probably would have said your book was one of them. But
we have it as a bonus. It's
I'm deeply touched. Thank you. I'm honored and humbled. Woo. By the way, I read a quote recently and I've been working with it. And I think you'll appreciate this that much more, wonderful Diane. It came from a religious-oriented person, and it was a definition of humility. And the quote is something like this: humility is recognizing the power that you have and that it comes through you, not from you. I'm telling you, over the past 6 months or so, it has been resonating with me so powerfully, because when people recognize that humility is not holding down your head and being stomped over and such, but recognizing you have power, it's not from you, it comes through you. And the way to channel it is what you're doing, Diane, the going deep into text. As you mentioned, Laura, to find out the psychology of the human condition and the ability to live in joy daily, no matter the circumstances. Yes, these are wonderful, wonderful aspects of living. And that's why people love our webinar, by the way. Yeah, I mean, you should see, we get emails all the time saying, this thing is so cool. I look forward to the next one. I mean, that's a big compliment to you. And Lori is not here. I mentioned Diane. It's pouring rain in Southern California, and she's stuck in traffic. As I said, pouring rain in Southern California is like a blizzard in New England. So it's, which I learned how to drive in blizzards in New England, and we used to love it, especially when your car, would spin around, and you have to know how to put the brakes on and stuff. Yeah, but hey, guys, hello, guys, not girls. Okay, so this is a great question. You ready? Here we go, kids. What are you doing to prepare for 2022?
Diane, you ready?
Diane, you're up.
I have to say, I never thought that I needed to prepare for 2022. I mean, first of all, it's not a Jewish New Year. It's a secular New Year. It's based on the cycles of the sun, and the Jewish calendar is on the cycles of the moon. And we have things that we do for our New Year. For secular New Year, most people go out and get drunk and try and forget what they're doing. And we do the opposite. We are introspective. And we look at our mistakes and we vow to correct them. And we look at our positives, as Barry said, with humility, knowing that all the good stuff comes through us and not from us. And I think that the retrospective part, there is an aspect that people make resolutions. And that is a positive thing. The trouble is that a lot of them have to do with physical fitness, and then they drop them as, they go to the gym a few times and then it's over. But I think the idea of making a plan for how to improve in different ways. One of the things that I would like to do that I work on perpetually is not speaking gossip, not speaking what in Jewish is called lashon hara. That means saying things with your tongue that is not good, that is bad. And I end up in Jewish tradition, we do that when we talk about people, when we gossip, when we say this happened to so-and-so, unnecessarily. And to try and focus not on the negative, but to focus on the positive and on ideas, not on people. That is a resolution for me. So it's something I work on perpetually because I always slip. But I also know that the next conversation I have is a new opportunity, whether it's 2022 or whatever date it is. Each day is a new opportunity. And as a Jewish person, I wake up thanking God for that, saying, Moda Ani, thank you, God, for this opportunity. So between Friday and Saturday, is that New Year's Eve, Friday night?
Yes.
There's no difference. I will take a drink. It'll be called Kiddush. And we will be celebrating what Jews believe is a day ordained by God for lofty purposes. And we intend to talk about the section of the Bible that all Jews do. And we're going to have a meal together. This week, we don't have really a very full table because I'm afraid of Omicron. But anyway, we will have a Shabbat meal, and it will be wonderful because I get to be with my husband, and we'll be celebrating the loftiness that is inherent in that day. So I hope that we can carry our resolution through into the new year. But it's only part of a cycle. It's a day that you can use constructively, and I hope everyone does. But it's not a day that changes anything. Every day is a new start. That's the way I see it.
I think that you've mentioned here several things I wrote down, which are very crucial to understanding, especially this year coming up called 2022. Getting drunk is, for want of a better term, so passé. In other words, I think most people, because of the COVID, are recognizing more what you said, Diane, in the sense that it is truly time to become more sensitive, more aware of what we'll call our thoughts, our words, and our deeds. I want to go specifically what you said about words, because how we speak to one another, most especially to those that we love or purport to love, and to people that we don't even know yet, should always be done with a mindset that you are here to bring forth a benefit in life. In other words, your words matter. And in fact, the most important words you can ever hear are self-talk. What you say to yourself and how you encourage yourself to maintain resolution, to live in improvement, and to unfold day by day is probably the greatest accomplishment that anyone can have in life. So self-talk becomes very important. And whether or not you keep your resolution to go to the gym, okay, that's nice. Physical fitness is certainly important. But the resolution to be a speaker of good for yourself, family, friends, and all living beings, I think you've mentioned it so well, Diane, that's really to raise a cup of Thanksgiving. And you do it with a good wine and the knowledge that there is a creator in the world. And whether or not you believe that, that's beside the point. You're not going to convince me otherwise, and I don't here to have to convince you. But what we want to do is share with you that living in a sanctified environment is far more beneficial to yourself and family and all living beings than otherwise. So wonderful, Maura, what are you and Jimmy doing to prepare for 2022?
It's funny when you first asked that question, I'm thinking the year 2022. Then I'm listening to Diane talk about New Year's, and I have to tell you, I'll go on both channels. Now, the funny thing is, my husband and I, from when we met in college, we were never mainstream people in the sense that we were.
We believe that, Maura. We believe that.
Okay, so what that means? Let me translate that to New Year's Eve. My husband will never go out and drink if he's driving, and he's not even a drinker. He'll have a glass of wine. He will never do it. So out of all the days of the year, my husband will not go out New Year's Eve. And I'm the same. Usually we're in bed at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. So you could put us in that same category. We would have a glass of wine at home. We'd probably have a nice movie to watch. And if we do anything, we would probably go out for a walk, maybe in downtown St. Petersburg, and we would be back home before everybody else got out for their late night dinner and drinking. So we have safety, but a nice time out. As far as like the new year, and Diane, I'm going to say I have some similar things to reflect upon like you. I take every day as the same day, as another day. Every day is a new day. Every day is an opportunity to reflect, but to also be better than what I was, to bring new life forth. So I'm always like that. And that's an every day of my life sort of a thing. There was one thing I wanted to mention. You were talking about gossip. And immediately, as soon as you said that, it brought something to mind. And maybe this will touch on other people. Oftentimes I've used this quote that came from Eleanor Roosevelt because I love it. She said, small people talk about people. Average people discuss events, but big people talk about ideas. And I've always been an idea person. And I want to say this, if anybody wants to think about this year coming, it is very easy if we want to find fault with someone else, a neighbor. We don't like the way they did this, the way they looked at us. We want to find, but if you want to feel good about yourself, keep yourself in the realm of new thoughts, new ideas, new visions. And so I could finish it with this, talking about new visions for the new year. A lot has changed since COVID. It's not as easy to travel. I have no plans to go out of the country, which I normally do. But I will tell you this, as the ambassador of happiness, I would so much prefer to be in the company of people as opposed to on Zoom. So down here in Florida, I decided for this coming year, I'm going to do two things. And it's almost like taking what I couldn't do and turning it into something that I can. I have an entire lifetime of travel images, and in each picture, in each one of the travels that I took in life, and sometimes the travels could be to another part of town that's really different from where I came from. Other parts of travel could be, being in a self-pitch tent somewhere in Africa. And they all tell a story. They all talk about different cultures. And I was working on this for a while. I've actually put together a presentation that takes people through different travels and different places and different cultures in life and shares some of the differences, some of the funny stories, and how we can adapt and grow and change the way we think about ourselves and our neighbors, and how do we find what's good. So I'm actually putting it into a presentation. I can do it online, but I'm actually expecting to do it here in Florida. And the second thing I want to do, and this goes back to being celebratory. Believe it or not, now you might feel my energy now, but I'm very serious. And I would like to have fun, even as serious as I am. So what I've done is put together a presentation for adult communities here in Florida. And you think we have a few? We have a lot. Active adults. I mean, I've done things with the very elderly.
Wait a minute. I want to make everybody aware that when Laura's talking about adult content, she means real adults.
Yeah, never that. I'm not even PG.
Right.
But we have so many large active adult communities where they love to bring people in. And I have some new fun things that all revolve around how to find your happiness, how to be happy, how to play like a child. And I'll tell you, one of the things I came up with was a game show environment to give people hints on some happiness songs and immediately get people into that mode about I remember that song. Oh, we used to do that a long time ago, and turn it into a fun time. So what I've managed to do is think, we can't go backwards to what we used to have. We kind of have to move forward, but how can we do the things we love with the kinds of people we enjoy in this new environment? And so I really am planning on celebratory things, helping people enjoy life, being a conduit for other people to remember what's fun, what's joyful, what they could laugh about, and also what are some of the good things that we all have? What are some of the talents that we have, even if they're funny talents, things we didn't learn at school? And so I put all of these into presentations, and I want to tell you, I'm doing it as much for myself as I am for the people that I'll be visiting with. So that's how I'm looking forward to 2022.
So you're bringing out something that, again, is universal in the sense of it doesn't matter what your religion is, what your culture is. Every human being wants to live in a celebrating way. Now, you can also be celibate. It doesn't matter. But we're talking about celebrating. And that is really part and parcel of the dynamic of what I think is, for want of a better term, this change of time called January 2022. So first of all, two things on that, as you mentioned, Diane. So 2022 is just a number. I mean, where did it come from? I happen to be doing a series right now called I'm Curious About. And I did a series about I'm curious about Christmas. I talked about that. I'm doing a series right now, I'm curious about New Year. And one of the things I talk about, because I'm very fascinated by calendar and such, is the month of January is using the Roman god, as it were, called Janus, Janus. Now, Janus is a two-faced god. He has a face looking forward and a face looking backward, as you mentioned, Maura. But it's not looking back in the past and being burdened, or looking forward in the future, say, forget all that. It's the ability to blend, because one of the things I discovered, and that's what I'm talking about, is that Janus is holding a key. And that key unlocks the door to a new you. See, if you have a person looking forward, looking back, that's a great image or image. But it's the key to open the doorway, the causeway to new life. As you pointed out so wonderfully, Diane and Laura, on the ability to live in such a way that your life unfolds every single day, to celebrate the essence of being alive. And I want to make mention, you did, of Rabbi Jonathan Sack, Oliver Shalom, because He unfortunately left us relatively early. He passed away because of cancer. His flame was so bright, so beautiful, so positive, so good, so energizing. And the genius of what we have in life through YouTube and email and such is that anybody and everybody can have access to it now. So it's part of what we're talking about here is not just a transitory situation where, okay, we're going from 21 to 22. It really doesn't matter because it's just a date. It's a made-up calendar. But it's really about the transition of self, recognizing that you are a soul experiencing life fully. That's what self is, that you're a soul experiencing life fully. The body, it's a chariot, it's a vehicle. What are you doing with your soul? And I think that was part and parcel of some of the questions that we had here. People really love the essence of Diane Medved, or Morris Sweeney, or Laurie McDermott, yeah, even Barry Shore. It's the soul part of what we bring. That's why we talk about, we like soul music. Well, soul music can be chanting Gregorian chants. It can be chanting certain nigunim. It can be chanting Jersey Boys. The point is that it's the soul that's emanating from you and celebrating the world. So I want to say, if I may, a huge thank you to Diane and to you, Laura, and to you, Lori, who she was texting me 13 times. I'm so sorry, I can't be there. I'm sorry. That you're giving of your time, your energy, your thoughts, your love, and people are responding. This marriage webinar, and marriage is an essential cornerstone to life. And we'll discuss it more in 22. Some of the issues that are happening in marriage with children, etc. But this has been a growth process for all, certainly for me, for people that are watching and involved, and they're sharing it. And you should know, you should take great pleasure in that, because without you, it doesn't exist. So again, a huge thank you. And we're going to give everybody a blessing, again, as we usually do. I want to do a quick hug, and then a blessing, and then a big say goodbye. So the hug, of course, hug stands for heartfelt, unlimited giving. Heartfelt, unlimited giving. 1, 2, 3. You'll forgive my throat. I have a little bit of a cold. And our blessing is for everybody watching and listening and sharing. Go forth. Live exuberantly. Spread the seeds of joy, happiness, peace, and love. Go mad. Go make a difference. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Joy of Living podcast. Now that's another step towards your healthier, happier, and wealthier life. Never hesitate to do good in the world, no matter what the situation. Join us for another upbeat discussion next time at barryshore.com. And be sure to leave a rating and subscribe to the show to get more conversations like this. And remember to share it with your family and friends too. See you on the next episode.